You don't know me, but I know everything." The words blinked on my phone screen in harsh white letters against a black background. I stared at them, frozen. My breath caught in my throat. Behind me, the auditorium buzzed with celebration. The proud faces of families, the sound of laughter, the promise of a perfect evening. But that message? It was a bomb detonating inside my chest, because those words were just the beginning. A second message arrived, raw and cruel in its simplicity. "Look closely at your husband. He's been living a lie." My hands trembled as I swiped, my eyes widening with horror. There, in photos I wasn't meant to see, was Jonathan, my husband of 15 years, holding hands with a woman who wasn't me, smiling in places I never went, whispering secrets behind my back. 1,000 memories flashed through my mind, now twisted and stained. And as the ceremony continued, as my daughter walked across that stage, the truth burned like acid in my veins. The man I loved was a stranger. And everything I thought I had built, my marriage, my family, my future, was a lie. Right there, under the bright lights, I realized this was no ordinary heartbreak. This was the moment my old life died. And I was reborn. I stood frozen in the corner of the auditorium's spacious lobby, phone clenched tightly in my hand as if it might burn me. The buzzing chatter of proud parents, teachers, and students swirled around me like a distant storm. The low hum of the PA system, the crackling static before each announcement, the soft echo of footsteps on polished marble. None of it registered anymore. My world had narrowed down to the glowing rectangle in my palm. The first text was cryptic, a whisper from the shadows of someone who knew all the things I didn't want to face. The second was a dagger aimed straight at the heart of my marriage. I blinked hard, willing the images to disappear, but they stayed, crystal clear. Jonathan, my Jonathan, the man who kissed me goodbye every morning, who held my hand during tough times, who smiled at me across the dinner table and promised forever. Now, caught in a dozen candid snapshots, he was laughing intimately with another woman, a woman I'd never met, a woman who didn't belong in my life. Their fingers entwined, their eyes locked like co-conspirators in a secret I was never meant to uncover. A sudden swell of nausea rose in my throat. My knees weakened. For a moment, I thought I might collapse. Behind me, the sound of Amara's name being called snapped me back to reality. She was up next. My daughter. My heart. The reason I had held the family together. The reason I had swallowed countless doubts and fears to present a perfect front. And now? How could I face her, proud, radiant in her cap and gown, while my own world crumbled in secret? I forced myself to take a breath. 1, 2, the crowd surged forward as Amara's name echoed through the hall. I straightened my spine, wiped the moisture from my cheeks, and stepped toward the entrance. Jonathan appeared beside me, his arm slipping casually around my waist, a smile curling at the corners of his mouth. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. I wanted to rip the mask off his face and expose the man beneath. But I didn't. Instead, I plastered on the smile I had perfected over years of rehearsed happiness. "Let's do this," I whispered to myself. The auditorium was a sea of caps and gowns, shimmering in the soft light filtering through stained glass windows. The air was thick with emotion. Joy, nostalgia, hope. Parents wiped away tears, friends exchanged hugs, and teachers beamed with pride. On the stage, the principal spoke about dreams and futures, about the power of perseverance and family support. I scanned the crowd for any sign that someone else had discovered what I now carried in my heart, a secret, sharp and suffocating, but everyone else smiled, oblivious. I took Amara's hand as she approached the stage. Her eyes sparkled with excitement and promise. She was the light that had guided me through every dark moment. I had to hold on to that. As she received her diploma, I felt a strange detachment, a split between the joyous occasion and the torment inside me. Every smile felt like a lie. Every cheer a hollow echo. When the ceremony ended, applause thundered through the room. I caught Jonathan's eye again. His gaze was steady, unreadable. Was he waiting for me to confront him? Or was he certain I never would? Outside, the air was crisp and cool. Families clustered in groups, exchanging congratulations and hugs. I pulled Jonathan aside, away from prying eyes. "Who sent those messages?" I asked, my voice low but trembling. He blinked, surprised. "What messages?" he said smoothly, though a flicker of something crossed his face. I didn't answer. Instead, I showed him the photos on my phone. His face darkened, but his voice remained calm. "Where did you get those?" he asked. "Doesn't matter," I replied. "Are they true?" He hesitated, then said, "I never meant for you to find out this way." The words cut me deeper than the betrayal itself. He had lived a double life, a secret world where I was the wife, the mother, the public face, while he slipped away into lies. I felt the ground shift beneath me. But amid the chaos in my chest, a cold clarity emerged. I wasn't going to break. I wasn't going to be a victim. This was the moment everything changed. I would take action, not just for me, but for Amara. The cool evening air was a stark contrast to the suffocating heat I felt inside. The graduation party buzzed around us, chatter, laughter, clinking glasses, but all of it felt distant, like I was watching through a fogged window. I barely registered the congratulations from friends and family. The faces blurred into a sea of smiles, none of which reached their eyes. Jonathan stood beside me, calm and composed as always. His tailored suit hugged his frame perfectly, his polished shoes gleamed, and his hair was meticulously styled. The picture of success, the perfect husband at a celebration for his daughter. But I saw behind the mask, the man I thought I knew was a stranger. The man in those photos was someone I had never met. For years, I had painted our life with the colors of trust and devotion. I believed in his words, in his promises, in the vows we took. But those photos shattered every stroke of that canvas. Each smile with another woman was a brush dipped in deceit. The crowd gradually thinned as guests began saying their goodbyes. Amara, radiant and glowing with the thrill of accomplishment, kept rushing to me for hugs and whispered thanks. Her joy was pure and untainted by the secrets I now carried. I held her tightly, feeling the fragile warmth of her belief in a family that was no longer whole. When she finally slipped away to speak with her friends, Jonathan turned to me. "Talk to me," he said, his voice low, almost gentle. But I couldn't, not yet. Instead, I looked at him coldly. "How long?" I asked. His face flickered briefly, a micro-expression of guilt, regret, or maybe fear. Then it vanished, replaced by his usual calm. "Long enough," he said. "Long enough for him to build a secret life beneath our own. Long enough to betray me and the family we created." I retreated to the small study room inside our home later that night, needing space to think, to breathe, to escape the suffocating weight of the day. The walls, once comforting, now felt like a cage. I sat at the desk, staring at the phone again. The messages, the photos, every detail screamed betrayal. I thought back to the subtle signs I had dismissed, the unexplained late nights when he claimed to be at work, the occasional scent of perfume that wasn't mine, the secretive phone calls he hushed whenever I entered the room, the weekends he needed to travel but was vague about destinations. I had buried these doubts beneath layers of hope and denial. But now, the truth was undeniable. Jonathan's double life wasn't just an affair. It was a parallel existence, a shadow world where he was someone else entirely. But I was done hiding behind denial. I wasn't going to crumble into tears or beg for forgiveness. Not anymore. I had survived storms before. I had fought battles that left me scarred but unbroken. This was my moment. My rebirth. The moment I rose from the ashes of betrayal. I needed a plan, a way to protect Amara, to confront Jonathan on my own terms, to reclaim my dignity and my life. The woman who received those texts was not the same woman who would respond now. I took a deep breath, the cool night air filling my lungs, steadying my racing heart. I was ready. The night stretched around me like a heavy curtain, the silence in the house thick and almost suffocating. The clock ticked steadily in the background, an indifferent reminder that life was moving forward, no matter how much mine felt paused in a whirlwind of betrayal. I sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Jonathan and I had shared countless dinners, whispered dreams, and plans for the future. Tonight, it was my war room. My laptop glowed softly, a blank document waiting for my thoughts. But more pressing than words was the pounding in my chest. The storm of emotions I needed to tame. Anger, hurt, disbelief, all swirling like a tempest. I replayed the photos in my mind, scrutinizing every detail. Each smile Jonathan shared with those women was a thread in a web of deception. How many were there? How long had this been going on? What did they mean to him? What had he taken from me without my knowledge? The questions spun endlessly, and yet, beneath the hurt, a cold clarity settled in. This wasn't just about him. It was about me, about my self-respect, about the future I wanted and deserved. First, I needed evidence, undeniable proof beyond the photos on my phone. I had to understand the full scope of his lies to dismantle them piece by piece. I would gather messages, emails, and call records, track his whereabouts during suspicious times, connect with people who might have seen the truth, consult a trusted private investigator. Above all else, Amara had to be shielded. Her graduation should be a memory of triumph, not heartbreak. I would talk to her carefully, revealing nothing, until I knew what we were dealing with. Her world had to remain whole, at least for now. The most important battle was within. I would not let this betrayal define me. I would rebuild, stronger, wiser, and unbreakable. Just as I was about to close my laptop, a soft chime echoed from my phone. A new message, from the same unknown number. Be careful what you do next. Some secrets can destroy more than just your marriage. I swallowed hard, the weight of those words settling like ice. This war was bigger than I imagined. I was ready, because after Rebirth, I was no longer afraid. The following morning dawned with a deceptive calm. The sunlight spilled softly through the curtains, casting warm hues across the bedroom where I lay awake, mind racing through every possibility. Jonathan was still asleep beside me, his steady breathing a cruel reminder of the man who had betrayed me. The same man whose smile could once melt my worries now felt like a stranger's mask. I studied his face, perfectly groomed, peaceful, unaware or willfully blind to the chaos swirling in my heart. My fingers tightened around the edge of the sheets. Today, I would no longer be silent. Today, the truth would be forced into the light. I dressed deliberately, choosing a simple yet sharp outfit, a charcoal blouse that matched the steel I was beginning to feel inside, paired with tailored trousers that gave me strength. My hair was pulled back neatly. There would be no hiding behind softness or vulnerability today. The house was quiet except for the faint hum of the coffee maker in the kitchen. I grabbed my phone, reviewing the messages and photos once more. Each one was a piece of the puzzle, and I was determined to solve it. Before stepping out, I sent a brief text to my closest friend, Laura, a discreet but fierce ally who had always stood by me through storms. I asked her to be ready to listen, to support, and if necessary, to intervene. I found Jonathan in his study, seated behind his polished desk as if nothing had changed. "Jonathan," I said quietly but firmly. He looked up, surprise flickering across his features, quickly masked by practiced calm. "I want answers," I said, holding up my phone, the screen glowing with the damning photos. His eyes darkened. He sighed, a long, weary breath. "You don't understand," he began. "I understand perfectly," I interrupted. "How long? How many? Who are they?" Jonathan's jaw clenched. "It's complicated." "It's a lie," I said, voice rising despite myself. "It's betrayal. It's the destruction of everything we built." His eyes searched mine, a mixture of regret and defensiveness. "I never wanted to hurt you." "Then why?" The question burned out of me. Jonathan's defenses began to crumble. He admitted to the affair, the late nights, the secret meetings. He spoke of loneliness, dissatisfaction, and mistakes. His words tumbled out like a confession and an excuse intertwined. But I was beyond forgiveness. I listened, not with empathy, but with the cold precision of a woman reclaiming control. This was no longer about love or hurt. It was about power and truth. I told him firmly, "I'm not the woman who will beg or break. I will protect Amara and myself. I will uncover everything, and I will decide what comes next." Jonathan nodded, defeated but wary. As he left the room, I felt a strange mix of relief and sorrow. The illusion was shattered, but from these broken pieces, I would rebuild. Later, alone in the stillness of the house, I began to draft a plan. Hire a private investigator to track his movements. Consult a lawyer to understand my rights. Keep Amara's world safe while preparing for the fallout. I was no longer a victim. I was a woman reborn, fierce, focused, and ready to take action. The morning light barely pierced the heavy fog of my thoughts as I sat in the quiet corner of the local cafe, my laptop open, a half-drunk cup of black coffee cooling beside me. The world outside bustled with ordinary lives, people laughing, chatting, oblivious to the storm raging within me. This was my new reality, a life fractured by betrayal, now painstakingly put back together piece by piece. I had contacted a private investigator recommended by Laura, a discreet, experienced woman named Evelyn. Her reputation was sterling, known for uncovering truths hidden in the shadows. I arranged to meet Evelyn that afternoon. When she arrived, her presence was commanding. Sharp eyes, calm demeanor, and a voice that brooked no nonsense. I handed over the evidence, the photos, messages, and a list of suspicious dates and locations. "We'll start by tracing his phone records, surveillance footage, and social media activity," Evelyn explained. "If he's been hiding this for years, there will be traces." I nodded, feeling a flicker of hope in this methodical pursuit of truth. That evening, I sat with Amara in her sunlit bedroom, surrounded by graduation gifts and heartfelt cards. She smiled up at me, unaware of the tempest brewing in our home. Her innocence was both a balm and a blade. I knew I had to tread carefully. "Sweetheart," I began softly, "Mommy has some things to figure out, but nothing will ever change how much I love you, okay?" She nodded, trusting me completely. I promised myself I would shield her from this pain for as long as I could. Meanwhile, Jonathan's behavior shifted. Gone was the warmth and casual intimacy. He became guarded, evasive, and often absent. Our conversations were terse, filled with unspoken tension. One night I overheard hushed phone calls behind closed doors, voices laced with urgency and secrecy. The man I had loved was slipping further away. A week into the investigation, Evelyn called with updates. Jonathan's phone records show multiple locations unaccounted for during supposed business trips. Surveillance footage confirms meetings with at least 3 different women over the past year. Each revelation was a fresh stab. I felt rage, betrayal, and heartbreak, but also a fierce resolve. This wasn't just a story of infidelity. It was deception on a grand scale. Into the night, I journaled, pouring out my pain, anger, and determination onto paper. I reminded myself, this was my rebirth. I would rise, not just for me, but for Amara, for the life I deserved. The house no longer felt like home. The once warm and vibrant space where laughter echoed now carried a heavy silence, punctuated only by the quiet footsteps of a family slowly fracturing. Every glance, every whispered conversation was laced with unspoken tension. Amara, though young, was no fool. She began noticing the subtle changes, the coldness in her father's eyes, the way her mother's smiles didn't quite reach her. One afternoon, while we sat in the garden, she asked quietly, "Mom, is everything okay?" Her voice trembled with uncertainty. I swallowed the lump in my throat, forcing warmth back into my voice. "Everything's fine, sweetheart. Just some grown-up things we're figuring out." But I knew the cracks were widening. Jonathan's facade began to crumble under the weight of exposure. He was restless, jittery, a man cornered, One evening, he confronted me, voice low and tight. "Why are you digging? Why do you want to destroy us?" I looked him straight in the eyes. "I'm not destroying anything. I'm uncovering the truth, for Amara and for myself." His anger flared, but beneath it lay something else. Fear. Fear of losing control. Fear of being exposed. Evelyn called late one night, her voice sharp with urgency. "We've uncovered financial transactions linked to a second property, a place he's been using for these secret meetings." The implications hit me like a punch. Jonathan had been leading a double life, not just emotionally, but physically. A whole world hidden from me. I stood at the window, looking out at the quiet street, my reflection fractured in the glass. The woman looking back was no longer the naive wife. She was a warrior. This was no longer just about betrayal. It was about survival, about reclaiming my identity. The invitation to meet her came unexpectedly. A text message on a day when the weight of silence had grown unbearable. The words were simple but laden with meaning. "We need to talk. It's time." My heart pounded with a mix of dread and resolve. Who was this woman who shared Jonathan's secret? Was she a villain or a victim? A rival or an unwilling participant? I agreed to meet at a quiet cafe on the edge of town, a neutral ground where truths could be laid bare. I arrived early, nerves taut like a drawn bow. The cafe was cozy, almost intimate, with warm wooden tables and the faint aroma of roasted coffee beans. She was already there when I walked in, taller than I imagined, with striking eyes that held stories I hadn't expected. Her posture was guarded, but not defiant. We exchanged tentative greetings, two women bound by one man's deception. "I'm Claire," she said quietly, voice steady but with a hint of weariness. I didn't want this either. As we talked, a strange kinship began to form, built on shared pain. Claire told her side, how Jonathan had spun promises, how she had hoped to be the one he would choose, how she had been kept hidden in the shadows. Her voice trembled when she spoke of loneliness and betrayal, too. We weren't enemies, I realized. We were both casualties of his lies. In that quiet cafe, we made an unspoken pact to uncover the full truth, to protect Amara, and to hold Jonathan accountable. Claire agreed to share what she knew, the names of other women, locations, and secrets he desperately tried to bury. I found strength in this alliance, a powerful weapon against the deception. Walking back through the city streets, I felt a fierce clarity. This war was bigger than I thought, but I was no longer alone. Together, Claire and I would dismantle the house of cards Jonathan had built. For Amara. For myself. For the truth. The days that followed were a delicate dance of concealment and revelation. While Claire and I pieced together Jonathan's web of lies, I grappled with protecting Amara from the growing storm, even as she began sensing the fractures beneath our family's carefully maintained surface. Amara was no child. She was perceptive beyond her years. She noticed the quiet dinners where Jonathan's laughter was absent, the whispered phone calls that stopped abruptly when she entered a room. One evening, as we sat in her softly lit bedroom surrounded by graduation gifts and mementos, she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, "Mom, why do you and Dad seem so distant?" The question pierced through me. I hesitated, searching for the right words. "Sometimes adults have complicated problems, sweetheart, but we're working through them. And I promise, no matter what, you are my greatest joy." She nodded, but the worry lingered in her eyes. Our conversations grew more frequent and honest, each one a thread weaving resilience between us. Amara's strength surprised me, her determination to remain hopeful even as shadows crept into her world. We found solace in late-night talks, sharing fears and dreams, clinging to the unbreakable bond of mother and daughter. Jonathan retreated further into himself, his silence heavy with guilt and regret. I watched him from across the room, a man imprisoned by his own mistakes. But I no longer felt pity. My mission was clear: to protect my daughter, reclaim my life, and expose the truth. With Claire's help and Evelyn's investigations, the full scope of Jonathan's deception was unfolding. Financial accounts, secret properties, and multiple relationships came to light, undeniable proof for any legal battle ahead. But more than the evidence, it was Amara's future I fought for. I vowed to be her shield, her voice, and her strength. The morning light filtered coldly through the blinds of my lawyer's office, casting long shadows that mirrored the heaviness settling deep in my chest. This was no longer just a private betrayal, it had become a public legal war. Sitting across from Marianne, my trusted family lawyer, I clutched the thick folder of evidence compiled by Evelyn and Claire. The photos, bank statements, secret property deeds. It was a dossier of deception meticulously gathered to expose Jonathan's double life. Marianne's calm, confident voice cut through the tension. "We have a strong case for separation and custody," she said. "The financial evidence supports claims of infidelity and hidden assets. We can protect Amara's interests and ensure you receive fair support." I nodded, feeling a spark of hope amid the cold calculations. When Jonathan was served with the papers, his carefully maintained composure cracked. He was defiant, claiming innocence, spinning stories to manipulate sympathies. But beneath his words lay desperation, a man cornered by his own lies. Our conversations became battlegrounds, words like daggers. He begged for reconciliation. I stood firm. My heart ached, but my resolve was unshaken. Through it all, Amara remained my anchor. She faced the upheaval with a maturity that both inspired and broke me. One night she took my hand and whispered, "Mom, no matter what happens, I'm proud of you. You're the strongest person I know." Tears blurred my vision as I held her close. Her courage fueled my determination. The coming months would be grueling. Court dates, negotiations, emotional roller coasters. But I was ready. This was more than a divorce. It was a reclaiming of my life, a fight for justice, a battle to protect the family I loved most. The courthouse loomed before me like a fortress, cold and imposing against the overcast sky. Its marble steps echoed with footsteps of those seeking justice, and those hoping to avoid it. As I ascended, the weight of the last several months pressed heavily on my shoulders, yet within me stirred a fierce resolve. This was the moment I had prepared for, to stand not as a victim, but as a woman reclaiming her life. I woke early that morning, the dawn barely breaking. The silence of the house contrasted sharply with the storm in my mind. In the quiet, I allowed myself to feel the full scope of everything I had endured, the betrayals, the heartbreak, the countless sleepless nights. Yet, alongside those memories burned a new truth. I had grown stronger, wiser, unbreakable. Amara's soft knock brought me back. She entered with that mix of nervousness and determination I had come to recognize in her eyes. "Mom," she said, sitting beside me, "whatever happens today, I'm with you." Her words, so simple yet profound, filled me with a calm I desperately needed. The courtroom was austere, the air thick with anticipation. Rows of seats filled slowly with onlookers, friends, family, strangers drawn by the whispers of scandal. I spotted Jonathan immediately. He looked tense, his carefully composed mask slipping in this public arena. Our eyes met for a brief moment, a silent exchange heavy with everything left unsaid. When my turn came, I stepped forward, heart pounding but voice steady. I recounted the years of deception, the hidden lies, and the impact on my daughter and me. I presented the evidence gathered, the financial records, the surveillance reports, the testimonies. Every word was a brick in the foundation of my new life, every detail a step away from the past. Jonathan's defense was aggressive, but I was prepared. Marianne skillfully dismantled his claims, exposing inconsistencies and half-truths. Unexpectedly, Claire appeared as a witness, her testimony pivotal in revealing the extent of Jonathan's duplicity. Her courage in stepping forward was a turning point, a moment when the tangled web of lies began to unravel decisively. The judge's ruling came after days of testimony and deliberation. Custody was awarded to me, with generous support agreements, and the hidden assets were accounted for in the settlement. As the gavel struck, I felt an overwhelming mix of relief, sorrow, and hope. The chapter of deceit had closed. A new one was beginning. Outside the courthouse, the sun finally broke through the clouds, casting warm light on the steps where Amara and I stood hand in hand. This was our rebirth. Together, we would heal. Together, we would thrive. The years that followed the storm were not easy, but they were mine. Each morning I woke with a quiet gratitude for the strength I had found within, for the love I shared with Amara, and for the freedom to shape my own destiny. The scars of betrayal never fully faded, but they transformed from wounds into reminders of resilience. I learned to forgive, not for Jonathan but for myself, letting go of the bitterness that could have consumed me. Therapy, close friendships, and moments of quiet reflection became my sanctuary. I rediscovered passions long buried beneath pain, pursuing new dreams with fierce determination. Watching Amara flourish was my greatest reward. She grew into a woman of grace, strength, and compassion, shaped by trials but not defined by them. Our bond, tested by fire, emerged unbreakable. We celebrated victories big and small, holding tight to the hope that carried us through the darkest nights. I rebuilt my life on my own terms, embracing opportunities that once seemed out of reach. Travel, new friendships, career ventures, all became threads in the rich tapestry of my rebirth. Love found me again, not in desperation, but in quiet confidence. And while the past remained a part of my story, it no longer controlled the narrative. My journey from shattered illusions to empowered womanhood taught me that even in our darkest moments, there is light. That pain can birth strength, that endings can be beginnings, and that after the deepest loss comes the greatest rebirth. As I look forward, hand in hand with Amara, I know our story is not just about betrayal or heartbreak. It's about courage, resilience, and the unyielding power of a woman who refuses to be broken. After rebirth, I took action when my husband's double life was revealed at our daughter's graduation. What would you do if the life you trusted most shattered in an instant? On the day their daughter graduated, everything changed for one woman, when a shocking text exposed her husband's secret double life. Betrayed, heartbroken, and faced with a devastating truth, she stands at a crossroads, crumble under the weight of lies or rise stronger than ever before. This gripping emotional journey explores the power of resilience, the fight for justice, and the unbreakable bond between mother and daughter. From whispered secrets to courtroom battles, from shattered illusions to a triumphant rebirth, discover how one woman took control of her destiny and reclaimed her life. Raw, suspenseful, and unforgettable. A story about betrayal, courage, and the fierce strength it takes to rise again.